Right, now on to our second album of the episode. Differently to the album that we've just reviewed, that I've known about and enjoyed for a really, really long time. The next album is one that I've actually only listened to in full for the first time last year, but have listened to religiously in this last week in preparation for this episode. The album is called Disintegration. It's the eighth studio album by British goth rock and post-punk band The Cure. Really one of the archetypal bands across both genres. The Cure have been around since the late 70s, just as that initial popular wave of the, I guess you would call the original out-and-out punk bands was kind of coming to a bit of a close. And that next generation of groups coming along took the blueprint and started running with it, taking it into moodier territory, I guess. Often focusing on subject matter and having a sound that's possibly a bit darker, a bit more somber, and definitely tortured. And and I mean, like I said, they've been around since the late 70s. I think their first ever hit was "Boys Don't Cry," which I think came out in 1979, which is 10 years before the album that we're reviewing today. That kind of shows a little bit of the longevity that they've had, and the sort of staying power they had, especially in this decade. And with a track like Boys Don't Cry, in particular, you kind of heard something that was really quite progressive for the time. It was quite a progressive sort of emo sound that kind of, I guess, encapsulated what people thought of them for those first few years. And then as time went on, they really ended up becoming like the poster boys for just goth music, and everything that they ever worked on really accumulated with this album that we're recording. It's the one that they're most well known for, and nothing they really did afterwards kind of grabbed people in the same way, even though they were still fairly popular for some of the 90s. And Disintegration really ended up being this pretty mind-blowing blend of psychedelic synths and very keys heavy dreaminess, with kind of a blend along with the sort of more guitar driven side of things as well, everything just coming together in a really, really awesome way. And some of their most famous tracks are on here. I'm sure we'll be picking them apart. But before we get to that, I just wanted to give a shout out to Tony with, since this is 1989 and you were born in 1999, the albums that we're now reviewing are only actually 10 years older than you. I mean, does that make you feel old?
Well, 10 years is a long time, so I think I actually feel youthful from hearing that fact, and also youthful from listening to this album, because it has such a nostalgic vibe to it.
What did you think of the album? Tell us a little bit about it, Tony.
Well, I quite enjoyed it. Yeah, I heard you speak about like the genre, and like I honestly kind of didn't even clock that they were kind of like this goth type band just from listening to it. And if anything, kind of understanding that they're in technically like the musical like lineage of some of the shit that comes out later on in that sort of genre, it makes me be like, what went wrong? But I'm like not a big like, I don't even know if this is really like that related. I guess it's like a distant like evolutionary cousin. But like things like Bring Me the Horizon, I'm like, get lost. And it's the fact that this, like, now that you said it, I'm like, yeah, it does kind of have the commonality of being like this somber sort of like down in like mood. But I feel like compared to those other things, this delivers that in like a very like a believable way. It's not like over the top, like, oh, woe is me. It's like, oh my god, I'm feeling the depth of human sadness through this song. It has a sick bass line, and I quite enjoyed it.
I think it's funny that you mentioned Bring Me the Horizon, because for me that's a band that's like a very, very, very distant like great grandson, like 800 times removed. But
it's like it's like how wolves have been like domesticated into like pugs. It's like, oh my god. What have we done to this beautiful creature of nature?
Yeah. I mean, in between a band like The Cure and Bring Me the Horizon, there's a lot of different, I guess, ways that music has involved, and the way that metal has played a part, and the way that pop punk music with, like, I don't know, groups like Green Day, Blink-182, bands like My Chemical Romance have kind of helped, I guess, be like a big part in the history of the genre and the sort of variants that it's had over the years. And yeah, it's yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before. It's very interesting going back and listening to a lot of these albums and seeing, yeah, the blueprint, the origin, and like as I said, The Cure were really one of the first, you know, signature goth bands of all time. I mean, did you ever see like photos of the band, Tony? Like what they looked like? Because that's pretty gothy.
I literally had not until like one of the Spotify things like auto played a music video. I was like, what? That's what they look like? Oh my god. I think I kind of knew the name of being like, oh, is it like emo adjacent? But
definitely, yeah.
But other than that, like I was not really familiar with their reputation at all. So it's pleasantly surprised, just judging it solely by the content of the music within.
How about the rest of you? What were your like initial thoughts? Did you listen to the band very much before checking out this album?
Well, I listened to a bit of The Cure, not albums so much as a few individual songs. My favourite Cure song is probably The Love Cats, which I know causes you tremendous pain, Ethan, and I will not apologise. It is a tremendous song. It is still their best work, having listened to this album. I will not be convinced otherwise. In fact, Boys Don't Cry is very good too. And, you know, Friday I'm in Love, cracking songs. But yeah, no, this album, I listened to it 3 times. And I've learned something interesting about it, and I can sum up my feelings about it. Is this album is a pool of treacle, and if you go into that pool of treacle and you try to like actively listen to it, if you try to swim in this pool of treacle, it exhausts you, and you just have a real bad time, and you end up feeling like you're sort of drowning. Whereas, you see, that was my mistake. My mistake the first time I listened to it was I was listening attentively. I was trying to, you know, really think about it and like pay attention to it, and I did not enjoy it. And then my second time around listening to it, I just had it on in the background while I did other stuff. And it's like music that you're not really paying attention to in the background, you know, when you're just lying back in this pool of treacle and you're just like, yeah, I'm just in the treacle, man. I'm just lying in the treacle. I don't need to worry. It's actually not bad. It's you know, it's not amazing, but it's not bad. And so those are my feelings on this album. It is a pool of treacle, and if you go into it and just are like, yeah, I'll be treacle for a bit, it's okay.
Yeah, probably have oh, there you go ahead, Johnny.
I've sort of had it in reverse, where the first time I listened to the album, it was in the background, just being like, yeah, this is all right, and then sitting down to then just have to listen through it all and think about it, just being like, okay, this is a lot, this is long.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've got a similar background as Andrew just said. You know, I obviously knew Boys Don't Cry, and then I listened to Friday I'm in Love a lot of times when I was driving around Soviet-occupied Afghanistan in Metal Gear Solid 5. And I was like, oh shit, it's The Cure. Yes, again, similarly, I've listened to the album twice. One was a kind of background listen, and one was the more attentive, kind of trying to make notes for the podcast. And I enjoyed both. I think I got different things out of both. I mean, even when I was really kind of, you know, attentively kind of trying to like focus in, getting ready for the podcast today, you know, there are still some songs that kind of wash over me. But ultimately, I really appreciate and enjoy the kind of vibe of this album. I think some of the synth work is spellbinding. It's magical, and it kind of sounds like what you'd imagine like a quintessential great 80s album to kind of sound like. The one downside, I think, has already been alluded to by Johnny, is just the length. You know, this is a kind of a beast. You know, we got a few kind of 6-7 minute tracks here, so I guess if you're not feeling it, that probably would be quite a negative.
Yeah, it kind of I definitely get where you guys are coming from, and I think this is the song length and the song structure in particular. I think kind of represents two sides of the same coin, where one is the person that gets something out of it, and then the other one is the person that is, as you said, exhausted by it. Like for me, I really like that a lot of these songs are 6 or 7 or 8 minutes, because I just find that I can really really get lost in them, especially just with the tone of the album. Like I listened to this, I listened to The Cure, and I listened to Disintegration for the dreamy soundscapes, the like crossing into some other kind of dimension, which I think is like a key part of this album, or a key like style. You know, it's I mean, I think the first thing that you hear on the album is the sound of like wind chimes, and I think that to me is such a like a hypnotic way to start the album. It's like it's kind of lulling you to sleep a little bit. You're about to go under, and then you're about to experience the whole of Disintegration. And I think Plain Song in particular is such a great way to kick off the album, because of that boom that you get after those chimes. I mean, it's like, I remember the first time I listened to this album, I was like, wow, this is really eye-opening. I just did not expect how loud and full on it was going to get so quickly. And that kind of brings me on to the structure of a lot of these songs, which is very... It's very Curie that they've kind of been doing these sorts of songs to, I guess, a lesser extent on their earlier albums. And the kind of structure that I'm talking about is one where you have these very lengthy, kind of very steady as well, elongated intros that kind of take some time to build up some kind of atmosphere or something like that. And then in a lot of cases, the vocals don't really kick in until quite far in, so you just have this build-up of instrumentation. On one of their earlier albums, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, the opening song, The Kiss, is very much like this. It has this like very awesome tension that it's building up over time before Robert Smith eventually comes in and starts singing. And a lot of the songs on this album are the same way, and if it doesn't work for you, I can see how that would get quite stale quite quickly. And considering a lot of the songs are like this, I mean, I would say that earlier on, the sequencing of the album is quite good, in the sense that the longer songs tend to be sandwiched by shorter ones, or rather shorter ones by the standard that this album sets. But then later on, those last 4 or 5 songs are all very long, and if you're not enjoying them and you feel a bit battered by the album at that point, I can see how it becomes quite monotonous towards the end.
The odd thing is, there were songs on this album I did quite like, and they were all ones towards the end of the album.
Right,
I do think if I asked you to guess what my favourite songs on this album were, you would not be able to guess, but that's partly because I'm a bit inscrutable. But my favourite song, it's close between either Fascination Street or Homesick for my favourite songs on this album, and then Disintegration is in third.
Homesick is so good.
Yeah, I mean, those, I'm glad you mentioned those, Andrew, because Fascination Street is my absolute favourite song on the album, like, hands down. It's not even close. And then the title track, Disintegration, which is the song I knew really, really well from the album going into it, which is it's a weird one to know very well. I don't really know why, but I wasn't that familiar with Love Song or Pictures of You going into the album, but I knew Disintegration, as in the title track, really, really well. So those are my 2 favourites, and I do like Homesick as well, although I probably wouldn't call it one of my favourites. I don't know if it's the same with you guys. Fascination Street is a pretty big track off the album. Like, it's not one of the deep cuts or anything. I think it's quite popular among Cure fans, and it's a great song.
It's when it starts picking up is my feeling on it, at least. It sort of comes out the gate a lot more, has more of an energy to it.
It's the least lethargic of all the songs. It is the one that feels most like something is happening, which I think I was just very grateful for at that point in the album, to finally have something with some propulsion behind it. Because
Fascination Street is a song that has the energy and the tempo and the hooks in a way that a few of the other songs on the album have, and I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, because I do like a lot of the other songs on the album, but the word that I used earlier on was steady. I think a lot of these songs are very, very steady, and they kind of plod along, and because of that, because they're 7 or 8 minutes, sometimes even, I mean, I think that the same Deep Water as You is like 9 minutes.
Yeah.
That is kind of a marathon at times.
Yeah, that was my least favourite song on the album. Just because it went on for so long.
The thing I want to be clear on is I do like long songs. I think one of my favourite songs is like 12 minutes long. So like, as long as you're doing something interesting, you can make a long song.
Yeah. No, I mean, I like long songs that trick you into thinking they aren't long songs. So like, I think it's Get Innocuous by LCD Sound System is like 7 minutes long, and the first time I listened to it, I would have told you it was like 3 or 4 minutes because it drew me in, and I lost track of time listening to it. But I did not lose track of time when I was actively listening to to this album.
Yeah.
I think the thing that tends to bug you two in particular, what I've noticed, is songs that repeat themselves quite a lot and don't really develop in a certain way, which is why, and you obviously correct me if I'm wrong, if that's not like if that's not right.
I think there can be repetition, but there needs to be something else, or something else building, something to keep it moving. If it just becomes...
the reason I mention that is because when we reviewed Remain in Light, I remember one of the things that Johnny said that he didn't like about Born Under Punches was, and again, maybe I'm just misremembering, but it was like you can enjoy the way that something starts, but if it doesn't do much with that idea, then it's difficult to remain invested. Whereas I don't really mind songs that are, as I've said, like they're very steady and they plod along. Like Disintegration in particular, the title track, it is 8 minutes of basically the same melody on loop. And sure, there are different layers that come in and out. You know, the synth work, like the proper kind of jittery synth work doesn't come into the song until like around the 4-minute mark. But that is a song that is literally 8 minutes of basically the same melody over and over and over and over, and I don't get sick of it. I know it's not a very developmental song. I know it's not really like building on anything in particular, but I think I have less of an issue with stuff like that than I get the feeling that you guys do when we reviewed songs on these albums in the past.
Yeah, I think there's definitely... Yeah, that probably is true. A lot of this album, to me, just feels like a lot of the same thing that I can't really distinguish from itself, even across different songs. So it takes only a few that kind of stand out in any particular way, really.
I think for me, I can enjoy repetition in a song, but it's the 1-2 punch of it's repetitive and also it's very long. I can enjoy something that, you know, I was trying to think of repetitive songs that I like, and I thought of Losing My Religion by R.E.M., which is, that's got to be about 4 minutes long, and that's, I don't know, mostly the same sort of stuff all the way through, but I was like essentially addicted to that song for a good part of my teenage years, and could listen to it over and over again on repeat because it just did something to my brain. So, I don't know, maybe that's a special case, but I think I can enjoy it.
Losing My Religion definitely is a bit more of a conventionally structured song, though. Like a conventionally structured pop song than the tracks that you get on this album. Yeah. Like with Disintegration and Homesick. Yeah.
But again, I should say, like, Disintegration and Homesick were in my top 3 songs from this album, so it's not...
which...
I think it is funny that the I would say like the sticking point for this album might be that it's kind of sort of repeating nature and its length. And I feel like I've also been quite like critical of long songs. Like I feel like my usual default stance is like if you want to be longer than like 5 minutes, you really gotta do something new. Otherwise, I'm skipping. You're getting skipped. But this, even though I definitely agree that like there isn't really that kind of development apart from like when the vocals kick in. That's like a nice moment of like, oh yeah, this is the song that has vocals.
But you guys, sorry, just to cut in, but you did notice that thing that I was talking about earlier on, where the vocals take a substantial amount of time to get involved. Like it's a very deliberate thing in the Cure's style. They've done that throughout their entire career.
Anecdotally, it feels like it's probably an average of 2 minutes into the song is when vocals start.
I did actually time for several of the songs. I timed when the vocals came in and when other things happened. So yeah. Taking a quick look through my notes, Plainsong singing starts at 2 minutes and 40 seconds in.
Yeah, I mean with Plainsong, the song doesn't even start at the
the song doesn't even start till 30 seconds in.
Yeah, the actual first experience of this album, for me at least, is you click play and then. Some time passes and you need to then check again. Are my speakers working? Did I actually click play?
Tony, I cut you off there a second ago, by the way. Sorry.
No worries. I was just going to quickly add. I think they add that buffer so that your songs. They predicted the crossfade feature on Spotify that would come 30 years later on, and they were like, "We don't want our songs getting crossfaded." There's a little buffer of silence there. But it's interesting, like talking about the vocals being like delayed. I feel like my other only favorite piece of long music is On the Nature of Daylight from the Arrival soundtrack, or at least that's what it's featured in, and that's obviously no vocals in that. So it's like, even though the vocals are sometimes coming quite delayed, like listening to them as just like an instrumental piece up until that point, I didn't feel like they were like super. I didn't like feel like, oh no, it's not worth listening to them until this point. Like I really, it captures the same like the mood that I like even when the vocals aren't going.
Yeah.
I did have in my notes for Homesick that singing comes in at 3 minutes and 20 seconds, and that I might have preferred it if it had just stayed an instrumental.
I sometimes feel that way about Cure songs as well, actually. I'm kind of glad you mentioned that, Tony, because I think with a lot of artists that we've done in the past, on this particular series, people like Prince and Kate Bush in particular, their vocals for me are such a like integral part of why I really, really, really enjoy listening to their music. I think with The Cure, I do like Robert Smith's vocals, but I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that the main reason I listen to The Cure is for Robert Smith. I definitely think I prefer the instrumental palette of their music. And I think that's just because I like the kind of soundscapes that they can create. I think in particular on this album, something they do probably better than on any of their previous albums is it's actually kind of similar to something Johnny mentioned a second ago about how everything kind of sounding the same and not being able to really distinguish something from something else. I actually love that about this album. I think that so many of these songs, texturally, what you're listening to sounds like if you picked apart an individual instrument, like, I don't know, the bass part or the keys or whatever you want to pick out, it kind of sounds texturally very, very similar to every other instrument in the song. And somehow the songs don't sound like sonic mush, you know. I feel like a lot of these songs have a lot of depth and richness to them, and they just sound like this swirling blend of different instruments, which adds to that dreaminess. It adds to that like kind of going down and being, you know, submerged by something. I think Fascination Street is actually one of the best songs for that very reason. It's just like it's just a great collection of different sounds, and on top of that you've got the fast momentum driven tempo of that track too.
Yeah, you've put it really well there, Ethan. You've kind of summarized why I'm a really big fan of this album. You know, these fantastically layered, kind of beautiful introductions that will then kind of carry on, and for me, having the kind of the vocals coming in midway or kind of 2 minutes into the song, it always then is a little bit of a shift, so it does keep it interesting. It might be interesting if we discuss Love Song, because that's a little bit different to some of the songs we've been talking about, in that it's a little bit more digestible, you know, it's much shorter. I don't know if it was the single from the album, but it definitely gives off that vibe.
Yeah, definitely one of them. It's kind of easy to see why it's such a popular song as well. Like it ticks so many boxes of like a great melancholy, love song. Which is kind of funny because my sort of relationship with this album, the reason I only listened to it for the first time last year was because I've actually liked The Cure's music for a very, very long time. I have this memory of being like 15 or 16 and my dad asking me to listen to Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, which is another double LP they did, and it's got, a lot of songs on it. And he asked me to listen to it and go away and come back and figure out what my 3 favourite songs were, and he would tell me his, and then we'd have like a fun conversation about it. It was like a bonding thing. And he doesn't really like their music after Kiss Me, Kiss Me, so I haven't really visited anything after that album, of which this is one of those. And kind of in the last sort of 2 or 3 years, I've really, really gotten into music and music history, and I found out that this album was like a very, very beloved 80s album, and kind of wondered why my dad wasn't really keen on it, and why he once told me that he is one of the biggest Cure fans you will ever meet, yet he doesn't like their most famous album. And I think it's because of songs like Love Song. I think he sees songs like Pictures of You and Love Song, and those for him are like the standout recognizable tracks from this, and he sees them as like very sentimental, very sappy, very like cheesy, and like very unsubtle as well. And he's definitely somebody who likes a lot of the more kind of out and out gloomy, sulky, like almost apocalyptic kind of material that was going on their first, like, I don't know, 3-4 albums from kind of the late 70s and the early 80s. But I mean, I love Love Song. I think it's a great track. I love that it's very cheesy and sappy. I love that it's not very complex as well. Like it's very, very fun. The organ part is really great. I like how morbid it is. I like how janky the guitar tone is on Love Song as well. I just think, yeah, it's a great song. It sounds like you liked it as well, Harry, quite a lot.
Yeah,
that one.
Yeah, I think the reasons your dad didn't like this album are probably the reasons that I do. It's taking a kind of a more kind of emo, kind of, as you say, a bit of apocalyptic kind of band, and really kind of marrying the things that the 80s is known for, the heavy use of synth, the really kind of earnest, sincere lyrics, and I think that kind of marriage really works well for me. I think I joked to you, Ethan, that this is like the good version of the Smiths. It's ironic because obviously Robert Smith is not one of the Smiths, but perhaps he is a better Smith than Morrissey. And I also found out that he doesn't like Morrissey, which is quite funny. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see the criticisms of it being, blown out and a little bit repetitive. But again, I mean, that is the 80s, isn't it? It was a kind of decade of a little bit too much. So this is a kind of capstone album. It really summarizes, the things I love about the 80s and also the stuff that just doesn't work at all. But yeah, I didn't even answer your question. Yeah, I do like Love Song.
Yeah, I mean, you listen to kind of like detour just a little bit. I mean, you listened to that other album that I recommended to you, right? Pornography.
Yeah.
You can kind of hear that sort of sounds like an album that you can imagine someone would really love that album and probably not like Disintegration as much. Like they are very different.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
That is a bit like you've fallen into like the Nightmare Hospital version of the Cure.
Yes, no, it's fully like that. That is such a great way of putting it. It really is like that. Listening to that album,
rowing that fucking boat on the lake for 40 minutes listening to Pornography.
I think it is funny that, Ethan, that you've pointed out that like some of like the more romantic songs that are like earlier on in the album, like Love Song, you said that they were cheesy, and I'm kind of off two minds about that. On one hand, I do kind of look at them on like a analytical level. I'm like, okay, which part of this song isn't cheesy? Because I don't think they are. That's not the impression I get. But like I can't. But also at the same time, I can't like look at any individual part and be like, okay, no, like it should be cheesy by rights. But I'm in the moment of listening to it, and I'm like, I like fall for the illusion of it. I'm like, no, this is actually deep. Which is I think I find it's quite funny. I think the impression I get is that it's quite sincere, even though like it's kind of like, I guess it's like because it's been like played out since, but this was the OG.
I mean, this was very sincere. This, like, I know a little bit about the like this. Robert Smith, his current wife, they met as teenagers. They like fell in love with as teenagers, and they've been together since. And he wrote this song for her. And at this point, he was nearing 30 and feeling like, I can actually be open and earnest. I'm just going to write a love song for the person I'm in love with, and I won't worry too much about it being, I won't worry about it being cheesy, because it's not cheesy, because it is earnest, because this is someone that, like, actually singing their sincere feelings and not caring if people are like, man, you openly professing your love for a woman, that's pretty gay. And it's very sweet. I don't dislike the song. It's not one of my favourites, but like I respect that it's just a very earnest love song, and I don't think it is cheesy, because I think it does manage to transcend that by just being entirely genuine and straight-faced. There is no like artifice. There is no, I'm not trying to be cheesy, or I'm going to dress this up by being clever. It's just like, no, I just wrote how I felt on a page, and I'm going to turn it into a song because I'm a musician, and yeah. And I think that's nice.
Whereas I do think it is quite cheesy, but also sincere at the same time. And like to me, that's something that I think is so great about The Cure, is that they're able to create these songs that, like, when done by other bands, I would just feel like, I don't know, like the overly sentimental tones of those songs would make me just feel like a little bit too yucky. Like I wouldn't like it. I'm just trying to think of other, like, a good example of this is like Mr. Brightside, right? One of the most famous songs ever. I hate that song, and it's nothing to do with it being overplayed. It's just the lyrics are so, like, I don't know, like I feel like I'm allergic to listening to songs that lyrically and then instrumentally as well just sound like really, as I said, sappy, like overly emotional, like in pretty much most.
You don't get the beam of power, Ethan. You don't get the white person transcending feeling.
In pretty much most cases, I think with my music taste, I've always tended to gravitate more to things that are, like, I think a little bit grittier, a little bit edgier, but then I also think The Cure is kind of a band in between those, and somehow I really love it. And maybe that's just because it all stems from the fact that I wanted to, I don't know, be able to hang out with my dad about something that we both had in common, and then that has since kind of grown and grown and grown, and now they're just a band I really, really like anyway. But yeah, no, I just thought that was something worth saying about The Cure. I think they are very, very good at creating those kinds of songs, and them not, for me in particular, being like automatic. Ugh, no thanks. Like Friday I'm in Love, it's another song that I would say is very, like, it has that kind of sensibility that I'm talking about, but is also very enjoyable for me to listen to as well. There aren't many bands that can really do that for me.
It's a better song if you're getting headshots with a tranquilizer pistol and using the Fulton extraction system.
It's such a weird song to have married into that.
All the songs in that, because like the gimmick of that game is it's set in the 80s, so you're like picking up cassettes that have been left by the soldiers. It's also got Love Will Tear Us Apart, so Ethan, that's where I first heard that song. Really pleased to hear.
Nice. Love Will Tear Us Apart is another song that I would say is like, no, okay, I wouldn't say this one is cheesy, but it definitely has that sentimentality that I'm talking about. But again, really enjoy listening to that. So yeah, I mean, some bands can kind of get away with it for me, and others can't really for whatever reason. I also just wanted to give a shout out to the album cover as well. I always like mentioning the album cover when we do these episodes, just because I think they tend to be really good, and I really do like this one. Again, like I will say the same thing that I always say, which is the album cover sounds like what the music is, or rather it looks like how the music sounds. I really like how trippy the imagery is. I like the way that a lot of the imagery looks like it's kind of merging with itself and like fading in and out of itself. And the colours are really dark and bright and contrast well with one another. And then I also like, even though the first time I saw it, it did kind of make me laugh a little bit, but just having Robert Smith's face on it, looking really like, I don't know, murky and submerged in something.
Halfway putting on the Joker makeup.
I left you all the clues,
Yeah,
Batman.
he does look like him. He does look like him. It's all the fucking eyeliner. Like, I wasn't joking when I said that this is one of the biggest goth bands of all time. Like Robert Smith and Susie Sue are pretty much the reason why you can walk into any CX in the country and they'll just be like a very goth woman with a lot of tattoos and nose piercings and like other piercings will just be working there.
I got to praise them for that. Again, an extra point on their out of 10 score.
Yeah, but that's the reason I mentioned it, Tony. That's the reason I mentioned it. Yeah, was there anything anyone else wanted to talk about the album? Whether it's the sound, the singer.
I did. In my research about this, I discovered that the issue that Robert Smith was wanting to sort of contend with this album was as he was making it, he was approaching his 30th birthday, and he was operating under the belief that no one had ever made like a truly decent album after the age of 30, or no truly like decent rock album after the age of 30, and this was his attempt to like deal with some of those feelings. And as someone who is 30 and is now facing down their 31st birthday, it's not so bad actually being 30. It's fine. Robert Smith didn't need to worry too much. But yeah.
He was potentially inspired by...
I also found in my research that the Cure and Robert Smith were very heavily inspired by David Bowie. And David Bowie, born in 1947 in January, was still making great albums in 1977, including Low, the album. I think Low was 1977, which is the album that was one of the big inspirations for the Cure.
Yeah, I mean but having said that, like David Bowie is like a generational talent. Like it's difficult to be.
He's him.
I mean, again, yes, yeah, you can't assume that you're going to be as good as David Bowie, but like,
like the general consensus is that he's a 70s artist, but he did have great songs in the 60s and has had great songs since the 70s, like a lot of other artists, but there aren't many that have been able to like transcend multiple eras, multiple decades in the same way David Bowie has. That's kind of like a it's difficult to sort of match that.
Oh dear, what's his name? Why can I? His backing band was the Shadows. Cliff Richard. Cliff Richard is another artist who has transcended decades. I think he had a number one hit in every decade since like, I can't remember if it was the 1950s or the 1960s. He may not have had one last decade.
It's funny how basically Mariah Carey has that as well, just because one period every year that one fucking song is on the radio all the time.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. It's great that you mentioned David Bowie, because I have sometimes thought about like, I've not listened to every single band that has ever existed, obviously, but I have racked
Man, you're slacking, Ethan. Come on.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, Christ, I'm supposed to be.
You're a fan of.
Call yourself a fan of music.
Name every band.
Oh god, what was I saying? Yeah, no. So
about David Bowie.
Yeah.
I'm not listening to every album.
I have been trying to rack my brain thinking, because these guys have been around since like 78, 79. What band do you listen to before that inspires you to make the kind of music that you do? And then the only groups that I can think of or artists are people like David Bowie and The Clash and the Sex Pistols, and groups that had like an aggressive very ahead of its time style of rock music, but then also with somebody like David Bowie, you have like this massive art house element to his music as well, and then somehow all of this stuff kind of combines, and then you get groups like The Cure, and then another group like Joy Division as well, which we will be coming to. But I know me and Harry, we just watched a film about the guy that basically discovered the group, and like the whole thing was like, we've never heard music like this. Like, we've never heard bands that create music like this. And I think The Cure is very much like one of those groups. They probably have never been as famous as somebody like Taylor Swift, for instance, but I can see why my dad, for him, this band was such an important band for him growing up, like throughout the 80s. And the same for so many other people of kind of his generation as well. I think we've done a few artists like that on this series as well, but The Cure is definitely like one of the big ones. Like, if you were an outcast in the 80s, like if you didn't really have many friends, like The Cure was just a group that you'd listen to. Like that's the kind of band we're talking about.
Yeah, it's kind of like good emo music.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like it doesn't come across as like insincere. I found it interesting kind of hearing why he didn't like the Smiths. It kind of touched upon why I didn't like it. Like, I never really kind of got on board with kind of the things Morrissey was saying. It never felt as sincere as it does here. There's something about the kind of the confident self-expression, kind of emotional truth, and also something Andrew touched upon, the fact that this is, as far as we know, someone that's essentially been in love with the same person pretty much all their life. There's not like 7 divorces. They're writing from a kind of a point of view, a place where they've been with someone for as long as they have. Obviously, I know this album didn't come out yesterday, and they've been together longer since then. But I think that's quite interesting.
He said he would always love them, and as far as I know, that continues to be true to this day. So
very sweet.
Man of his word.
Yep. Hey, you write you write a song like Love Song. You have to commit to not breaking up, I feel.
I think it is interesting. Back when you mentioned that this album was coming kind of from the energy of him being like, oh no, I'm about to turn 30, and it's funny because it reminded me of Ethan trying to instill the dread that I'm getting older. As I'm turning the senile age of 26 this year. This year. And it's funny because I do kind of get that vibe, that kind of like, not that turning 30 or 26 is actually old in the grand scheme of things, but that feeling of like realizing that at some point you are not a kid anymore, and you feel like, oh my god, what if, oh no, I'm like decaying, oh no. Feeling that for the first time of like, oh no, there actually is a march of time is like captured in this album, I think.
Yeah, by Robert Smith rules, you've only got another 5 years to do your masterwork album.
I'll get around to it.
Yeah, I think weirdly for me, because listening through the first time, mostly in the background while at work in a funeral home, there were definitely moments in the lyrics where it kind of shone through that there's like some of that turning 30 existential dread, and sort of be sitting there in my job just being like, that's not really, I don't know. That feels so empty.
It's funny. There's something like kind of not entirely like serious or morbid about it, but yeah, it still has that emotional impact for me, I feel.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it just sort of felt misplaced. At least
I get that.
To where I was sitting.
Before we wrap up, there is just one more song I really wanted to touch on that I love. It's Prayers for Rain. This is another one of my favourites on the album. I've been listening to it so much this week, and I think this is a song where the atmosphere on it is just so palpable that you can almost taste it. Like it's got such a misty, chilling vibe about it. And And I actually think my favourite part on the entire record comes in the first minute of that song. Like, it kind of starts off with this sort of twangy guitar intro, and then there's this moment where you slowly start to hear like the rise of something, and then there's this whoosh that happens, and the whoosh is so fucking loud it almost blows my ears off. But it's just such a great moment. It really reminds me of their early albums as well, because I think the overall sound of Prayers for Rain it sounds more like a song that you would hear on something like Pornography or Faith or 17 Seconds, or one of those early albums, and I really like that about it, and I was just conscious that we hadn't mentioned that song, so I just wanted to give a shout out to it.
I think either Prayers for Rain or Disintegration is one of my favourites.
Yeah, they're both very good.
Mm-hmm.
I find it amusing that Prayer for Rain is followed by a song that sort of begins with the sound of rain. I think that's... I don't know, that made me chuckle.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't say the song did much for me, but I did. I agree with Jonathan. I did enjoy that the prayer works, or the prayers work. It does rain.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't trust very much you say anymore, Andrew, because you love cats. So. You know.
I mean, it is what. Okay, what? Let's settle this quickly. What don't you like about Love Cats?
Well, I've kind of. I mean, I've sort of riffed on it a little bit. Like, I think the Cure are at their best when they're creating songs that are full on, in your face, incredibly dense. Like, they have a tension about them a lot of the time as well. Like I love all of that.
You're describing Love Cats. You're describing Love Cats.
That isn't Love Cats is this silly dumb fucking song about liking cats. Like, it's not a good song.
It's not about liking cats. It is being a cat.
It's so bad. Sorry, mate.
It's a complicated, like interweaving of different, different instruments. It's got a real, feel to it. It's some of his best singing, I feel. It's just it's complicated, interesting. It's it's danceable. It's
Yeah. You want to get up on two paws, right, and like fucking
exactly.
dance around.
You want to show people that a spring is a dangerous thing,
I've not listened to the song in a while, but I really
you should
don't
go
think
back
like...
to it. Go back to it with a fresh perspective, and then let me know that I'm right, and it is in fact the greatest of the songs by The Cure.
Yeah, join us for Music Mates Love Cats on 10-part series. Coming soon.
Right. This episode is getting a little bit long now, considering it's 2 back-to-backs, so I think we should probably wrap up and head over to conclusions now.
No, we shouldn't, Ethan. It's in the spirit of The Cure. We can just languish in this moment. enjoy that uneasy tension of we're gonna keep saying the same thing we've been saying. Keep looking back to that earlier moments in our life. Remember when we were talking about love song?
The lyrics haven't even started yet in this podcast.
You know what? That I'm going to edit this episode by removing out the first 30 minutes of it and having it just be blank noise, and it just starts with somebody randomly talking and saying something.
Perfect.
Just to keep in tone with Disintegration.
Speaking of love song, I feel like it was a funny lyric that stuck out to me, because there's one line that's like, "You make me feel like I'm clean," and we've ended this Music Mate series with this Disintegration of Cure. We started Depeche Mode. We start with Depeche Mode in for the 90s. You make me feel like I'm clean, the cleanest I've been.
Wow, you've got some memory to you. It's not like that is one of the more famous and popular songs off of Violator.
So it's like that. There's that thread of musical history being continued on our very own podcast.
What are you going to score the album?
Well, that is an interesting one. I feel like we've done a quick turnaround on this one, and I probably should have listened to this more than I did, because I really liked it. Like I started this and I was like, it's pretty good, and like only across my 2 complete listens, I've done as much homework as I should have. I feel like I keep liking it more and more. So I'm like, oh man, am I gonna regret giving it too low of a score? Is the thing that's been rattling around in my head, and like the moment of casting my mind back, when you were like, oh, this album not only is it good, it also spawned the goth makeup art style. I'm like, oh my god, okay, it's got to get an extra point for that. So I think I will have to give it a 10 out of 10. I feel like I really like it, and I think I've kind of struggled to explain that, because it's not like...
Yeah, I feel like I've not really heard you like talk about the things that you really
I know. I feel like it's quite hard to explain, because it mostly just comes down to the fact that like they can deliver, like, the emotion of the song is delivered with like in all of them. I feel like it's delivered with such like a pointedness that kind of blows out of the water all the other, like the fact that the song is long, or like things like that. Like it like engrosses me so much, like that sense of not quite sadness, but kind of like a bittersweet nostalgia, that I really like. I wouldn't normally like. I don't normally like in other like sort of sappier songs, but in this album, I'm like, wow, I really keep being captivated by it. I think it might be just like the earnestness, and also like almost like the overall quality of everything sort of coming together. Like I noticed, like listening to this, maybe it just comes from this remaster, but I was like, oh, wow, this song is like really well mixed. Can't help but notice, like, oh, it's all like at the right sort of volume. I'm like, this is that's something that kept sticking out to me. Like, man, it's well balanced. Yeah, I feel like I'm still struggling to exactly capture it. Like, I feel like I've kind of like not been super like pro it, not been like overwhelmingly spewing love, and then I've just come in with like giving it a 10 out of 10. But I also feel like I won't regret it. Like I'll just like it more as I listen to it more.
You're pre-ordering the 10.
I know, pre-ordering the 10, exactly. I'm investing early, saving us from doing retcon music mates, and be like, oh, yeah. Yeah.
Fair enough. Johnny, Andrew, either of you two guys want to go next?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I feel like it is perfectly fine background music. It is good sort of off in the distance, and I feel, yeah, as you try and look at it, it just kind of doesn't work for me. But I don't know, it was still enjoyable enough, but not entertaining enough for me. So I will give it a very middling score of a 5.
Yeah, for me, listened to, swimming in the treacle, paying it attention, it would have been a 4 out of 10. Having it on in the background, not really paying attention to it and just having it there, would have been a 6 out of 10. So on average, I will be joining Jonathan. It is a 5 out of 10 from me.
See, I do really like this album, and thought, I really like it. I think I'll give it an 8. And Tony's come out and just given it a 10, which is has blown the scales off, in terms of, do I raise it, do I keep it? But no, I think I'll keep it at an 8. I think I've not said too much, but I've pretty much outlined my feelings on this one. Similarly to Andrew, I think it's better when you're kind of not fully paying attention to it, but less. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I kind of mean just like picking up on the vibe and the kind of mood, losing yourself in some of the kind of melodies and some of the really long tracks. But yeah, it's been a really good discovery, The Cure. So yeah, I'm really pleased you picked this, Ethan.
No problem. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad you guys all, to some degree at least, enjoyed it. For me, I think it's kind of tough to give this a score just because I do really badly want to give it a 10 and join Tony because I think this is the best that The Cure has to offer, and I do love this band quite a bit, but I can't just give every fucking album on this series a 10, which is, it feels like it's been 50-50 tens and then albums that are not a 10, which I don't think is, even though I've picked all the albums, it still feels a bit like I can't just give every album that I enjoy. It would
only be exactly 50-50 if you gave this album and then the next album a 10, I think.
Well, the next album is a certified 10, like without a doubt. I don't even have to think about it. But okay, yeah, I'll give it a 10. Whatever. I think Disintegration. In the video that I made about 3 albums from the 80s, this was one of the ones that I picked, and I said in the video that at times it feels like I think I said something like, at times it feels like you're watching a shower of shooting stars in front of you, and sometimes it feels like you're on this ship that's sailing across the night sky and there's just a full moon in the backdrop. And I think that for me is this album. It's like stargazing. Sometimes it feels like you're falling through a very thick kind of abyss. It can be really serene at times. It's very sullen at times, and it's just a melting pot of a bunch of different ideas. And I don't mind the length of the songs at all because I'm just so like captivated by the sound. If I had one complaint about it, I would say I'm not massively keen on the final song, Untitled. Like I think Homesick would make a better final track, and to be completely honest, I would have not minded if the final song had been Disintegration and then you drop the 2 songs afterwards. I think Disintegration would work really well as a final song, like going out with a bang. But yeah, I mean, it's a minor complaint. I still think the album's incredible. So yeah, I'll stick with that score. Which brings us back to one final episode, one more album left to do, and it's kind of an interesting one because we're in 1989 now. We've got 1990 next. Well, we did Depeche Mode for that, but actually the last album that we're doing is right back at the start of the decade. It's in 1980, and the album is fittingly called Closer. You know, well, it's either Closer or Closer. I'm not entirely sure. It could be a double meaning, but it kind of feels like a fitting final album, even though the album is incredibly hopeless and tormented and disturbed and feels like it could have been written in a fucking tomb. It's so, yeah, it's really not a very positive album in the slightest, but it'll definitely be an album I'll have a lot to say on because I'm a massive fan. So yeah, we will see you for that final episode at some point soon. Yeah, see you then.